find the most sustainable way to run that practice. The waste, in particular the plastic waste problem that the cannabis and hemp industry has, is just absolutely astronomical.
You could have dinner and maybe a nice smoke afterwards with anybody in the world. Who would it be and why?
Elon Musk. The reason for that is that he is obviously very wealthy, involved in technology heavily, and very influential. So if someone like that could step in and say, okay, this is the plant that we're going to use, this is what we're going to invest in, it would just change the game forever. Mm-hmm. It would change the planet.
I'm Michael Mercer, and welcome to another episode of Pathfinders, where I get to sit down and talk with industry leaders within the wellness, CBD, and cannabis space. Enjoy.
So Cait Curley, thank you for joining me for our little episode here on Pathfinders, and I'm excited to get a chance to also get to know you a little bit better and your background and where you've come from and where you want to go. So I guess first and foremost, like what could you? I'm just curious to know a little bit about your personal history as far as like where you were born and raised and brought up.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. Happy to be here and connect with you. So I was born and raised in upstate New York. It's a city called Binghamton, about an hour below Syracuse. I was born and raised there. When I hit the second year of college, I decided to branch out and I went to South Carolina for a year, the Myrtle Beach area. It was a school called Horry Georgetown. And then I went back to Binghamton, moved to the city for a couple of years, and then went back to Binghamton again. Then I went to Buffalo. That's where I finished my bachelor degree. And then I moved to Syracuse, New York, and worked there. And then I moved to Colorado, and I've been in Colorado it was 5 years in September.
5 years in September. Okay. And what brought you to Colorado? Because it sounds like you were a diehard East Coast gal. So what was the appeal of Colorado that brought you there? I'm assuming maybe cannabis related, but maybe it was something else.
Yeah, it definitely was cannabis related. So I was in the healthcare industry in Syracuse. I was a hearing specialist by school and trade, and I loved the position, still do, very much connected to it in regards to the hearing industry and helping the hard of hearing. But I was literally burnt out. I was waking up at 4 a.m. every day, going to bed around 10:30. And between that time frame, I was literally working all day. And I did it to myself. When you put yourself in a sales position and you're doing really well, you can't go backwards. So I kind of put myself in a position where I forced myself to be burnt out. And during that time, I was in the office first, usually I was in the office last, usually. And so during those times alone, I had a lot of time to kind of reflect on what I was currently doing and what I wanted for my life before I passed away. I kind of always looked at it as I'm in my deathbed when I'm 100 years old, and what do I want to be able to say that I accomplished? And I was 26 at the time, and I felt like that was an age where I really needed to make a leap. If I was going to make a leap for, some type of change where I wasn't going to be in an office 9 to 5 for the rest of my life per se, or until I retired. So it was literally this feeling inside of me that was saying there's something greater out there. There's something more. That was like the feeling. And so I was a cannabis advocate. I had been for some time, and I was very much alone in that sense. I really didn't have many friends that were consumers or even fans of the plant. And especially, I really had zero girlfriends in regards to that were a fan of the plant. If I was ever consuming, it was always with guy friends.
Hmm.
So I was like, you know what? I want to get into the cannabis industry. I think I can make a lot of money. I think a lot of wealth can come from it. And I think I can connect with people that are like minded. So, I mean, literally, I quit my job one day. It was like, I'm quitting. And then I moved home for a month to my hometown, my house where I grew up. And I was like, I think I'm going to go to Colorado. I had never been to Colorado before. I did not know one person, but I knew like it was the universe saying like, go here. This, and it, again, that like inner feeling of something feels right. Something is pushing me to go there. And of course, it being the epicenter of cannabis, I think that was a huge part of it too. So yeah, I moved to Colorado. I drove out a month after I quit my job and haven't left since. Well, I've definitely left. I travel a lot, but
Yeah, right. Yeah,
so
that's amazing. So you were 20, 26, 27 when you decided, is that right?
yeah,
To
yep.
to do that? That's, yeah, that's I mean, I got to tell you, that's ballsy. And also to be able to make that kind of, I mean, I guess to be that tuned in to kind of that inner voice or that intuition that was kind of telling you that, what you were doing wasn't maybe serving you the best in the bigger picture of things. I can tell you from, I come from the mortgage banking, industry, and I was in that for almost 20 years. And it took me much longer to get to that point where I was like, I'm done with this. And this just,
Yeah.
the idea of going into an office and just going through that whole, the whole deal, you obviously did sales too, so you understand the 100% commission mindset and what it takes to,
Yeah.
succeed, feast or famine, right? But I wasn't, it was probably, I was close to maybe 40 or my early 40s when I finally decided to break away from that. So good for you to have that insight that young, and to be able to, make that decision and just go. And I've born and raised in Seattle. I mean, I leave all the time because like you, I love to travel, but I've always called it home. But for you to just take off and get in a car and drive across the country to a place where you didn't have any contacts
Yeah.
or know anybody, that takes a lot to do that. So that's pretty inspiring.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. It just felt right. There wasn't one thing stopping me. There were a lot of obstacles in the way, but it felt right. And I can sit here to say today and say it definitely was. I do think that is a positive trait that I hold, kind of what you were explaining, is that I know when enough is enough. And based on looking at friends and family, I know that individuals can kind of stay with something because it's comfortable. They've been in it. There's fear of taking the leap, but I think it's a pro, and at times it can be a con, where when I know enough is enough, there's just something, this intuition that's pushing me of just like, drop it, move on to the next. And
Yeah.
that's definitely happened within the cannabis space as well within the past 5 years, where I'm going in a direction, I'm working with someone, or I'm working on a personal project, many different situations where I'm like, you know, you could go down that road, but just drop it and start what feels right, and what's fresh in your mind and feeling good, and go down that route.
So what happened when you landed in Colorado? Like, were you looking to try to go immediately work for, a cannabis company or dispensary, or what was your plan once you landed there?
Yeah. So before I moved to Colorado, like within that month of me saying, okay, I'm going to go and I've made this big leap, I started doing a lot of research on jobs that I could get into. Really, I was willing to take anything, just to get my hands on the
Mm-hmm.
plant and learn more about the plant. Even if it was trimming or something like that, I was willing to do it. And in my mind, I was like, okay, that will be a side job, and I'll still have a legitimate job that's paying the bills, most likely within the hearing industry in the meantime. So driving out, I had a job lined up. And I mean, literally, the day that I got here, everything fell down. Everything flip-flopped from what I thought was going to happen to what worked out. A big issue for me trying to stay within the hearing industry out here was that I was going to have to go through training again to be licensed in Colorado.
Okay.
And that meant like all day, every day, sitting next to someone, going through hours, and I just literally couldn't do that. I was like, okay, if I've dropped everything and moved out here, I'm not going to do anything but what feels right. And that included like picking up a waitressing job. I was like, I'm not going back to anything that I don't want to do. So that caused a lot of problems for me, because here I am for the first time in my life struggling financially. I've always been financially stable on my own, but me saying to myself, don't do anything that doesn't feel right, it caused a lot of problems where feelings were coming in with like scarcity and things like that I hadn't really had before. And I didn't know exactly how to deal with that, especially literally being alone. It's different when I have family and support
Sure,
around me
sure.
that genuinely like wants the absolute best for me. But new friends and acquaintances who are like, oh yeah, like you got this and stuff. They didn't necessarily, it wasn't in their core of like, we've got your back. And so it caused a lot of darkness for me being out here. But there was silver lining, and there was so much spiritual growth through all of it that in the end, it was all very beneficial. So there was that bit of a darkness literally from day one. But also so much amazing light, like connecting to the cannabis community, which is one of the main reasons that I moved out here. So I was 5 days in, and I went to a cannabis meetup. And really, like, that's how it goes in the industry. You go to one event, you meet one person, and you're in, because they can connect you to another person, and then they'll say, go look at this, go look at that. And
Right.
you really start learning the way of the land. You start connecting with individuals, and it's just a domino kind of effect from there.
So what was that? What was that first? Do you recall what that first turning point was? I mean, besides going to that first meeting and meeting those few people, what was that first opportunity, the opportunity that came along that you were most excited about back then?
Yeah, so I attended a couple other events, and like I had said, there was this idea of gaining a lot of wealth off of the plant. I knew it was becoming popular. I thought I could make a lot of money off of it. But again, almost immediately from the day that I entered the industry, I realized that it didn't need people trying to make a dime off of the plant. It needed genuine people supporting the plant, advocacy, education, kind of more of a foundation versus like try to make money. So those dollar signs kind of fell out of my eyes, which was again part of that, like trying to figure out finances. And I kind of stepped more into the advocacy role, because that's what the industry needed, and that's what was really resonating with me once I got out here. I went to one event in particular that really resonated with me and kind of changed the land of where I was going afterwards within the space, once I was there. And it was a hemp event. And back in, so it was 2015.
Okay.
Back then, hemp was a lot different than it is in 2021. CBD
Sure.
wasn't even popular yet. So I was at a hemp event, and literally and this still holds today for the most part, that when you walk into a hemp event, most people underneath that roof are saying, how do I change and heal the planet with the plant? And so I'm in this room with probably 60 people, and literally every person in that room is a hempster, quote unquote. And they're saying, how do we take the industrial properties of this plant and heal the planet, heal people? Someone handed me a hemp business card, and I was like, wait, what? You can do that with the plant? And so these people really touched my heart. I mean, it was people that were, OGs in the game, people that have really came to step up and try and lead a way in a path for the plant that many weren't. And that's the industrial side of it.
Yeah, there's a big difference, right? Going to you, I think you just kind of hit it there. Like you go to a not to say that all conferences are like this, but you go to a cannabis conference, right? And you see the kind of the people and sometimes the mindset that can be there. And then you go to a hemp conference and it's almost night and day, like completely two different crowds, right? Of people. And obviously there's crossover because people like myself and even probably you as well, where we've got crossover interests in both industries as well. And some people come from cannabis and go into hemp, and some people go from hemp to cannabis and back and forth. But yeah, I absolutely know what you're talking about when you speak about that.
Yep. Yeah. So that was that really was one of the game changers for me, was attending that event. And just, it still like warms my heart and my soul when I even think about that gathering. That's how most gatherings are for people in the hemp industry.
Yeah.
And it's just, and that kind of adds to the story of, here I am being an advocate, and I'm like, well, how the heck am I going to survive just being an advocate? This feels really right. I'm going to continue to do it, but how the hell am I going to pay my bills? Like,
right.
What am I doing here? And meanwhile, my family back home is like, what are you doing? Like,
yeah.
You were super successful. You've got degrees. Like, what are you doing out there? And kind of like, how high are you?
So how did those dots connect? Yeah. So how did you, when was that first time you kind of realized, like, I can be an advocate, I can do something that I love and help educate and bring awareness. And I think I've figured out a way to be able to support myself too.
Yeah, it took a bit. I was in and out of companies, and for the most part, startups. Those were the positions that I was able to take, because when you look at my resume on paper, coming from the hearing industry and hearing science, it doesn't necessarily directly connect with someone within the cannabis space that's looking for like a marketing director or chief science officer of like the cannabinoids and products and things like that. So it was taking positions as I could through startups, which was also hard because, as you know, in the cannabis and hemp industry, startups are in one day and they're out the next. It's really hard to get going and stay. So that was kind of, again, like even just being with a startup, that added to my mentality of like, this is so hard. How am I going to get through this? But I gained skills along the way. So with my education and advocacy, I started putting content out there on social media, and I kind of consider it art, whether it be like a photo of a product, a photo of myself, an article, and I would always put a caption with it that was captivating. And the idea was, okay, I'm going to put a photo out there that will pull people in, and then they're going to be somewhat forced to read the caption, and they'll be educated and by it. So that was actually working. And through time, I started to learn social media. I started to learn what worked, what didn't, kind of the back end admin type things. And eventually I met a brand that had quite a few companies underneath them, and they were in need of someone to step in and do their social media. And so I stepped in and did that. And because I was in the cannabis and hemp industry, I did have that kind of vibe that they were looking for and understood the plant. So it was a match, and that kind of helped financially get me stable and going. And also in the meantime, I was my own social media I was starting to get a larger following.
Mm-hmm.
And that eventually turned into the media brand that I have today, which is Cait Curley Media. And I do education, advocacy around the plant and people, products. A lot of these collaborations and partnerships are paid. So it was really like learning as I went through it all, and finally found some things that stuck, and allowed me to pay the bills as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, tell me, what are some other hobbies that you have, or things that you enjoy doing outside of when you're doing for outside of work, or I should say non-work related?
Yeah, and it's so interesting because at this point I really do eat, breathe, and sleep hemp and cannabis. So everything is intertwined. My partner as well is in the cannabis and hemp industry. So it's like, there's really no fine line between work and pleasure. But really the thing that comes to my mind first, what do I like to do when I'm not quote unquote working, is spend time with my family. I have a little niece that I'm absolutely obsessed with, and just seeing the world through her eyes is so inspiring. And it's just, I have such a good feeling when I'm around her. So spending time with family for sure. I also love fashion. So, shopping, thrifting, putting different outfits together. It's hard because like I said, I really do like live hemp and cannabis. So if I'm just like, I'm always thinking about it. I'm always like trying to find new ways to entertain or educate. Hobbies is something that I need to work on in 2021 because I don't have many.
Yeah. Do you find having a partner that is also kind of tied into the industry that does it? I imagine that would make it a little bit easier for you when it comes to trying to find, balance between, if your partner is involved in the same things that you are, then maybe that balance between work and play is a little easier to do in that sense.
I would actually say no, because he's somewhat the same. It's just like all day, every day, working on projects. Even if we're out to dinner and we're like on vacation and trying to relax, we're discussing like the industry,
Mhm.
or like, oh, well, what if we could do this? Or what if, this person could put money into this project and it could do this. It's just always thinking about the plant. Or it's like, hey, they should have hemp utensils here. It's just like nonstop. So a goal of mine for 2021 is to kind of try and be a little bit more present and not consistently thinking about the work and the plant and the industry, and maybe things outside of it, pick up some hobbies outside of the industry.
Mhm. Yeah, I know that's tough, right? But it's a good problem to have, because it obviously, when I hear that, right, to me, that just, it comes across that you absolutely love what you do, and you're enjoying what you're doing. And the idea that you have to like try and think hard to be able to do something else that, is just as fun, or that you're just as passionate about, it's kind of funny to think, right? Because you feel like I feel like I should be doing other stuff and have other hobbies, but I keep thinking about this. Well, in hindsight, it's because you obviously love and enjoy what it is that you're doing so much that oftentimes it probably doesn't feel like work, and a lot of times it probably does. But I think that's a great space to be able to be in, because not everybody has that, is that fortunate to do that. So and then I guess when it comes to travel, you've mentioned that a couple of times. Where do you like to travel, except for going back home and seeing family? Do you guys like to get out of the country at all, or what's your idea of traveling?
Yeah, well, that's been difficult recently with all of the pandemic.
Sure. Like, I guess, but before COVID, what
Yeah, for
was
sure.
traveling like to you then?
It was nonstop. So in 2020, I had the outline of my year was really to be spending only a week or 2 weeks in Colorado. I definitely do go home a lot to the East Coast. I try and make it back there at least every 2 months. Um, my partner and I both have been traveling to Mexico a lot, and that's also within 2020, within the pandemic.
Mhm.
There's a lot happening down there right now with hemp and cannabis. Um, they are soon to legalize, hopefully this year, Mexico on a federal level, cannabis. And that would then be the largest cannabis market in the world. So there's a lot happening down there. We have some friends that are involved with um, some sustainable projects in regards to the industrial side of the plant.
Mhm.
And yeah, so Mexico is probably the number one. Hawaii was a big a place that we really loved and had strings to in regards to cannabis and hemp. Went there often, and there were a lot of plans for Europe. There was in 2020, and there still is
Yeah.
in 2021. Ireland comes to mind specifically. They're like begging for people to kind of come out and help get it going there, and there is a lot happening there currently.
So how do you think our industry could improve?
So I think that probably the number one way in my mind is just for each executive CEO, head of the company to really take a look at their company from the bottom up and find the most sustainable way to run that practice. The waste, particularly the plastic waste problem that the cannabis and hemp industry has, is just absolutely astronomical. And it is a lot of people, getting in the game and just saying, hey, I want to have a CBD brand, or hey, I want to have a dispensary, and creating products and just, putting the products in plastic, not thinking about what's happening on the other end when the consumer is done with the product. So I think that's probably, in my mind, just one of the number one ways that the industry could improve. Regards to the hemp industry, I think a big factor in moving the hemp industry along in a positive way
Mhm.
for a real economy that is helping overturn the synthetic world that we live in currently would be to be growing more fiber, more industrial hemp plants versus for the cannabinoids. I think there was a stat in 2019, it was something like 95% um, of the grows that were harvested were CBD and cannabinoid.
Mhm.
Um, that's crazy when you think about that. So a lot more hemp plants that are grown for fiber, grain, the food side of things.
Yep.
That's what really needs to be done to help move forward the hemp industry.
So what are there any things that you think are, innovative or unique that are maybe coming to the market, or that you hope come to the market, or things that have kind of crossed your path, your radar?
Yeah. So on the industrial hemp side of things, there are a lot of really cool innovations there's a lot of cool products and innovations that are out there. They just need the funding to help, bring them large scale and therefore have an actual economy within this industry happening in the States. So there are some processing facilities that are getting ready to hit go.
Yep.
There's one in Montana, there's one in Texas, I think there's one in Virginia now as well. So funding, and of course, again, people growing more hemp to go into these processing facilities. There's a project in particular that I got to check out late last year, late 2020, and it was a hemp paper project. And it's a mill that is ready to hit go on 100% hemp paper on a commercial scale, which is yet to happen. in the States. So that would be huge. I'm really excited to see what happens with that. I did, like I said, checked out their facility. And then just a couple weeks ago, I saw some test runs that they did. Looks really good. So
Yeah, that's,
I would say out of the projects that I've
yeah,
seen, that because there's so much talk, and it's not just like that there's talk, but again, it's the funding that's needed. You've got this product, but it's a little guy and it needs a lot of money to get big.
yeah.
And so this is the first one that I've seen where I'm like, okay, not only have I seen your facility, but I've seen the byproduct. This is happening.
Yeah, I sometimes get angry every time I go to the mailbox and I just get all this mail, and it's just mind blowing that people still feel the need to send me. First of all, it's a pain in the ass, right? Nobody likes to go through all their mail, and you see all this wasted paper. And maybe someday down the road, it will become a law that if you're sending out mail like that, that it has to be all hemp, or something, because it's just such a waste to even, and eventually, hopefully, we can go just paperless when it comes to that kind of stuff, because most of it, 90% of the mail is junk anyways. But that's exciting. Yeah. And there's no shortage of companies out there, or people that have like really great kind of unique ideas on stuff, and like in more often than not, it comes down to just having the right resources to take it to market and to kind of see it through, right? So what kind of recommendations would you have for somebody who's looking to get into either the hemp or the cannabis market to today in 2021 now?
Yeah, I think my advice would be, you get into the industry, and at least for me, my first feeling was I really wanted to impress people. I wanted to become friends with people in the industry, especially people that were respected, OGs. These were people that I wanted on my side and to look at me as a friend. And so I don't think that's uncommon for someone coming in the space. Those are the type of people that they want to connect with. And it can be, you can start to almost be a people pleaser. And because everyone is in support of this plant, you kind of put shields on, thinking everyone is a great person, everyone has the best intentions. And so at least for me, I really opened up my heart to a lot of people, which was different from how I usually am. I'm usually a little bit more guarded, but I would say to be cautious entering the industry, to not necessarily trust everyone, not to necessarily think everyone has the best intention just because they're a supporter of the plant. And to also know that the plant is never judging you and your relationship with the plant. So it's no one else's business what your relationship is. You have nothing to prove to anybody but the plant. And so to kind of keep that in mind as you go through, I do, on the kind of the flip side of that, definitely recommend becoming friends with as many OGs per se that you can. And if anything, just sitting down and listening to their stories. To this day, those are some of the most valuable moments and memories that I've had within the industry, is just sitting there and listening to someone that's been in the industry for 50 plus years, listening to their story, everything that they've been through. It humbles you, and it puts things into perspective of how hard people have had to fight for this plant for where we are today and how easily accessible it is. So yeah, I would say just know that everyone doesn't have the right intention. And I know that's not the most positive note, but it's good for people to know that.
Yeah.
And to also, know that you have nothing to prove to anyone but the plant.
So what, anything outside, and again, I'm going to push you here, but anything outside of the cannabis or hemp industry, just on a personal level that you're looking forward to or excited about in the next couple of years? I'm sure being able to travel again freely would be obviously one of them, but anything else come to mind?
That's so sad that really not much comes to mind.
Yeah.
Not related to the plant. That
Yeah.
is something I need to work on. It's just like this bubble that I live in, and I don't really go outside of it. Like I said, 2021, I am trying to work on some more hobbies, picking things up. I was a dancer for a big portion of my life, so I have decided to start taking dance classes again.
Okay.
We'll see how that goes with traveling, picking up, but travel for sure. There's a lot of places that I want to go. I can't wait to get to Africa, go on a safari. Can't wait to go to Egypt. Israel is like probably my number one place that I can't wait to go to and check out. Yeah, lots of places I want to see.
So what would be like maybe just one or two things that you think are pretty unique about you that maybe most people wouldn't know? Most people that have met you, or have spent time with you would maybe be surprised to hear.
Yeah, I'm gonna make the like an assumption that people would be surprised to know that I am pretty chill, laid back. I'm from upstate New York. Kind of got a little bit of like a hood mentality and attitude to me. When you just see me through social media, people have said to me that they kind of expected me to be like a little bit more stuck up, not so personable. I think that might be a surprise to people that I am down to earth and chill. Before I entered the cannabis industry, every time someone heard, like, I would say, yeah, I do, I consume or smoke, they'd be like, what? Like, you smoke? What? So 5 years ago, that was a surprise.
Yeah.
One thing could maybe be all the time, especially when I meet new people. The question is, what ethnicity are you? Where are you from? Like, from New York, from America, and I'm Irish. And yeah, people always want to know what my background is.
Yeah.
But I'm very Irish, come from a very, very Irish family.
Oh, that's great. That's interesting. I've only been to Ireland once, but I was there for, I think, maybe 2.5 weeks or so. And I loved it. I'd definitely go back to Ireland, but it was a long time ago. But yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. And the Irish people are just, it was one of the best trips I've ever had was visiting Ireland.
Oh, that's awesome.
Who would you say? Oh, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, so I was an Irish dancer. I went over there for the World Championships, and my one trip to Ireland was not very fun. It was for the championships, very strict, a lot of anxiety, and it wasn't as fun.
You mean that when you say Irish dancing, do you mean like Michael Flattery or whatever his name was from the late 80s and 90s? The river dance. Yes, the river dance. Is that what you're talking about? Okay.
That's what I'm talking about.
I remember he used to always be on TV. And I remember they came to Seattle and did a performance, and I'm pretty certain it was him. It wasn't a spinoff. And I just remember, I don't know why, but I just really liked watching that dance.
It's
like
cool.
it was a really cool, super high energy, thing to go see. So I remember when I came to Seattle, I did go see that. I always liked it. You don't really see much of it now on TV, but I remember for whatever reason it was always on back like in the earlier mid 90s. Yeah.
Michael Flatley put Irish dancing on the map for sure.
Yeah. That's funny.
His partner, her name was Jean Butler in the original Riverdance. And when I lived and worked in New York City, I worked at a high-end nightclub, and I saw a lot of famous people, a lot of celebrities, and seeing her was the one time that I was literally starstruck. I was like, what? And she couldn't believe that I knew. Like, she was like,
was she
yes, you're my queen.
Yeah. And not to say, like, state the obvious, but what I remember a gal, would she always dance with kind of by him? Was she kind of red hair?
Yeah.
And for some reason I remember her, like, I couldn't point her out of a crowd today, but if
Yeah.
I had to remember kind of what she looked like, to me, it was like a Nicole Kidman, where she
Yes,
was
you are
tall.
completely correct.
Am I right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Yeah.
Spot on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's her. That's Kate Butler. I follow her on Instagram. She's got like 500 followers. And I'm just like always commenting like queen.
Yeah. That's awesome. So who would you say that you're most inspired by? Besides
That
her.
is what was
I said
besides
besides
her.
her. Yeah.
Yeah, she was definitely my idol growing up. I wanted to be her. I am kind of being on the spot answering that. You know, looking at the cannabis and hemp industry, I am definitely inspired by the people that have been in the industry 10 plus years who have continued to fight and fight and fight, not only for their rights, but their business and their land and their family. I'm really inspired by the small farmer. Seeing the the mission that these people and the values that they have behind them when they wake up every day, what they go through to just put food on their table, and that really expands beyond the small farmer. Like I said, the people that have been in the industry 10 plus years, it has been anything but easy, and you just know that they really care and they're really trying to make a difference. Those are definitely the people that inspire me most, in life and in the industry. Just there's a passion behind them that no one else, you can't take it away. And they have paved paths for us that, we wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for them. So OGs in the industry are definitely the kind ones, because there's definitely some that are jaded and bitter. But for the most part, really, really good people.
And so if you could have dinner, and maybe a nice smoke afterwards with anybody in the world, who would it be, and why?
I was actually asked this in another interview recently, and I think I would say the same person, Elon Musk. The reason for that is that he is obviously very wealthy, involved in technology heavily, and very influential. I think that if he sat down with a hempster like myself, or an industry leader, expert, and really understood what the plant could do for the planet, and I'm talking industrial hemp and waste products of marijuana and CBD plants. If he really said, okay, I'm going to try and incorporate hemp in every way I can into my company, into my products, that on a global scale would move hemp forward dramatically quickly. So if someone like that could step in and say, okay, this is the plant that we're going to use, this is what we're going to invest in, it would just change the game forever. It would change the planet.
Yeah, that's good. So. That's great. I think that's a really interesting, I think kind of profound reason why. And of all the people you could sit down and have dinner and a smoke with, right? Why you choose him, not just him as the, because of the wealth, or because he, the Tesla and all the other companies that he owns. But it's funny, it's not even a self-serving thing, right? You would want to do it for the hemp industry, because you know what that kind of that type of a person at that level, just with his intelligence, not just his wallet, but his intelligence and the visionary that he is, right? Just to be able to see the industry of the hemp industry, and so that's great. I think that, and who knows, right? You never know. I like to believe that anybody that you'd want to meet is literally like just maybe one or two relationships standing in between you and that person, right?
Yeah,
So
it'll probably happen. Probably in 2021.
in 2021, there we go. Well,
Most
hey,
likely.
yeah, Cait, I want to we'll kind of wrap up here, and stay on the line because I want to chat with you a little bit just offline here when we wrap this up. But I do want to thank you for taking the time to share kind of a little your background and where you're at, and excited to see where things are going to go, where things are going to go for you personally and with your business, and maybe someday those will maybe separate a little bit more, but for right now it's cool to see how intertwined that they are, and want to thank you for your advocacy, because and your you taking that on, because I think I know the industry can never have enough people on the cannabis and or hemp side as well, right, that are bringing education and bringing awareness to the greatest plant on earth, right? So thank you for everything that you do.
Oh, well, thank you. I really appreciate the platform to talk, and the opportunity to kind of get a little bit more about what I'm doing and what other people can do to get involved out there. So thank you.
You bet. All right, well, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for joining.
All right.
Bye.
Okay.